What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Hoopers Lounge. And quick shout out, real quick. Me and Alex are almost through the entire season of the NBA. The season ends on Sunday night, regular season. So we made it through the whole season, Alex. I'm proud of us. We struggled in past years to get through a full season of content, but we've done that this year, and we're super excited for the playoffs. But
Round of
today,
applause.
before the playoffs commence and before we get our predictions video out for you next week, we are going to be recapping the March Madness tournament that just finished up this past Monday night with Michigan defeating UConn in the national championship game. One of the more dominant runs of all time from a championship team. I would say they're right up there with those first two UConn championship teams in terms of just running through the entire tournament. They were clearly the best team all tournament long, and they deserve to be the champions, in my opinion. So, Alex, give me, teams that impressed you throughout the tournament and what you saw, just as a whole.
Well, obviously, Michigan is the team that impressed me the most. Surprisingly, in the bracket pool that we had, more people are higher on Arizona and Duke to win it all than Michigan. There were only two people who picked Michigan out of the 23 people that I had. So it doesn't seem like Michigan was the highest team. They didn't have the highest ceiling going into the tournament. I think that's a blame for their loss to Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. But yeah, they showed in the March Madness tournament that their regular season dominance was no fluke. They started off their out of conference schedule with a notable 40-point blowout win over Gonzaga, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is the greatest team ever." That talk kind of quieted down towards Big Ten play, and especially after they lost to Duke. But they dominated this tournament. I think they won every game by double digits. And if a game wasn't single digits, it's because the team came back in garbage time and made it a closer game than the actual score was. That happened. The national championship was actually a 6-point game, but UConn never really got it. UConn was never really in striking distance. Michigan always had them a couple of score lengths away, and every time UConn made a basket, Michigan was able to match that in the paint. Ade Mara and Yaxel Lendenborg were absolutely dominant in the national championship game against Terrace Reed, who, in my opinion, was the best big man in the tournament. We'll get to our all-tournament teams in a little bit. But Terrace Reed had a great tournament and could not match up against the two Michigan stars in the front court. So Michigan as a whole, they surprised me. They impressed me, breaking the Big Ten's 26-year tournament drought, the championship drought. That's big time for the Wolverines, and they built a roster on the transfer portal, and maybe we'll talk to that in a little bit, or maybe we'll stay away from that because that will evolve into its whole conversation. But I think that's a trend that we're going to see among national championship teams in the coming years.
Yeah, their whole starting five this year was all transfers at one point, which is insane how they just were able to gel, and it's a compliment to the coaching staff for sure. I was obviously impressed with Michigan, and I think you hit it right on the head when you said that loss to Purdue. I think maybe took Michigan off some radars compared to Duke and Arizona, who won their respective conference tournaments. I think that kind of evaluated them at a tier below to some people. And same with Florida, too, because they didn't win the SEC tournament. I think people just viewed the Duke and Arizona as the two best one seeds. But Michigan, again, was impressive. And all four of the Final Four teams impressed me for sure. Some of the teams that didn't make the Final Four that I just want to give a quick shout out to, I've got three of them. Iowa definitely had one of the best runs of the tournament. Did not see them getting past the second round in Florida, and that corner buzzer beater shot was amazing. Honestly, as cool as the Braylon Mullen shot was, that shot against Florida is right up there for me as best shot of the tournament. That was a crazy clutch shot. I think he hit it with less than 5 seconds left, down two to hit the three to win. So that shot to me is also that he'll be getting free beer in Iowa for his life. He won't have to pay for another beer in Iowa. So that was awesome. Another team, Tennessee. I thought they had a great run. I remember me and you were arguing about Miami and Tennessee in the prediction video, and I said I predicted Tennessee to go to the Sweet 16. I didn't even think they'd go to the Elite Eight. But Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament had a great tournament, and they had a great run. And then the other team that didn't even make the Elite Eight, but I want to shout out, is Texas. Going from the first four to the Sweet 16 is not easy, and they almost made the Elite Eight if they didn't lose to a buzzer beater by Purdue. So I think those three teams, to me, really surprised me this tournament, and I just wanted to give them a quick shout out.
I mean, the amount of buzzer beating shots this tournament was just unreal. You'll see Iowa's shot as right after with the Braden Mullen shot But how can we do that when we have Otega Owe hitting a half-court buzzer beater in the first round? And like you said, Trey Kaufman Ryan getting Purdue to the Elite Eight. I think those two shots, I mean, Iowa's shot was great. No debating that. But with that coming with 5 seconds left on the clock and Florida still having a chance to tie it up before, they didn't even get a shot off, which, by the way, storybook ending considering how last season's national championship ended with Houston not getting a shot off against Florida. Now Florida failing to get a shot off to end the game against Iowa. Kind of storybook there. But the three buzzer beaters and the numerous other clutch shots. I mean, Chase Johnson's layup for High Point. I'm sorry, I'm taking that over Iowa shot all day. I don't care that it was a layup. In fact, I do care it was a layup because that was the first layup that Chase Johnson had made all season. Every single bucket that he had before that layup was a three-pointer. That was the first two-pointer he made all year. It was to upset Wisconsin in the first round. I'm taking that over Iowa shot every single day. That was storybook. But the amount of clutch shots, I mean, the fact that Iowa's game-winning three-pointer from the corner with 5 seconds left is arguably not even top three. Just goes to show how many exciting games there were throughout this tournament.
Yeah, and another buzzer beater that would have been but didn't go in, Tyler Tanner for Vanderbilt, almost making a half quarter against Nebraska. That to me was a top 3 game overall in this tournament. One of the best basketball games I've ever watched. Just back and forth, 2 really good teams, and heartbreaking ending for Vanderbilt. The High Point game was awesome, and I want to talk just a little bit about. People probably forgot about this game because it happened on the first day or two, but the most underrated game of this tournament was dead-ass Duke versus Siena. Why was that a barn burner? Mm-hmm. Why was that an instant classic?
Genuinely was one of the, because Siena, the 16 seed, led the number 1 overall seed for 35 of the 40 minutes. Hell, for over half the game, they were up by double digits. I mean, everybody was freaking out over their bracket because everybody and their mom had Duke going so far in the tournament. And they were about to suffer what arguably could have been the biggest upset in March Madness history. Unfortunately, Siena's coach made a very interesting decision to play their starters for all 40 minutes of the game. And as one would expect, after 35 minutes of going all out, balls to the wall, full court press defense, you just don't have the energy to keep up. And when you don't have the energy, and when you're lacking on talent, Duke is going to do what Duke does, and they're going to come back and escape. But we were so close. We were a few substitutions away from Siena pulling off one of the greatest upsets in history. So.
And correct me if I'm
shout
wrong.
Out to Duke Siena. That was a great game.
Would that have been the first time that the number 1 overall seed lost in the first round, or has that happened before?
Virginia was the number 1 overall seed when they lost to UMBC. I don't know if Purdue was, but considering they had Zach Edey, I would not put that beyond them either.
I think
it's almost a trend. It's almost a trend at this point. That the number 1 overall seed is the most dangerous to lose.
I think those Purdue teams with Edey, though, I think UConn would have been the number 1 overall seed, maybe in those years. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But,
okay. A couple other games I wanted to mention that I really enjoyed. VCU's 19-point comeback against Chapel Hill. That was awesome. Unfortunately, VCU lost in the second round, but that comeback was sick. Texas Gonzaga was a great game in the second round. Really enjoyed that one. High Point, not only their game against Wisconsin, but their game against Arkansas was one of the fastest paced games I've ever watched. Like, that was a race. That was just a Daytona 500, just track meet. That's all that was.
It was an offensive showcase. And Darius Acuff Jr. showed out in that game. He was the reason that Arkansas got the win. His offensive capabilities were on full display there. Mm-hmm. And also, just on the subject of buzzer beaters, how about St. John's and Dylan Darling hitting the buzzer beating layup over Kansas to get to the Sweet 16? Again, just another clutch shot in a tournament full of clutch shots. I think it was outstanding. A back and forth one throughout.
I think most people would peg St. John's as a boring team to watch, just with their half court slow offense and their electric grind you out defense, but their game against Kansas and Duke were both amazing games to watch. And so I thought they were really interesting. Darren Peterson, I thought, to me, had a good tournament, but I honestly expected more of like an AJ DeBanza type performance from him. even though Debanza lost in the first round, I feel like he was very aggressive and he was willing to leave it all out on the line. Darren Peterson to me did not have as aggressive as a tournament as I expected him because, like you said, Acuff balled out. Boozer was aggressive as hell. He was amazing, and Debanza, even though he only played one game, I mean, he was amazing as well. So, what did you think of Peterson and his tournament? Because I was a little underwhelmed.
Underwhelmed, I think, is the best way to put it, because he wasn't bad.
No,
but
he
compared
wasn't.
to the other top prospects in this tournament, yeah, he did underwhelm. Because, like you said, Cameron Boozer, he had 3 games with over 20 points. His tournament, 3 double doubles. AJ Devontae, he played 1 game, but he dropped a 35-point double double. Keaton Wagler led his team to the Final Four. Right, a lot of these top prospects showed out in this tournament, and that's not the same case with Darren Peterson. And I have seen conversations online from not just from fans, but experts starting to question whether or not they would take Darius Acuff over Darren Peterson. I know this isn't an NBA draft, but I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think this tournament helped maybe solidify or at least present the argument that Acuff is a better draft prospect over Peterson?
Well, I love guards, and I think basketball has always been a guard-driven sport. Like, if you don't have good guard play, you're not going to win, regardless of how good the rest of your team is. In my opinion. So I think Acuff, I know Darren Peterson is going to be great, but I know Darius Acuff's going to make his teammates great. And I don't know if you could say the same thing about Peterson. And I think that is the argument. There's absolutely an argument for Acuff because, as my opinion, as prospects, I think they're neck and neck, but I think Acuff has the ability to be a better winner than Peterson. I think that's the whole reason why Cam Boozer is projected to be a top 3 pick. I don't think he's a top 3 prospect in this draft, per se, but Cam Boozer knows how to win, and he knows he has a high IQ, and I think that is another thing that you could point to separate Acuff from Peterson is his basketball IQ. So that's just my opinion on it. I think as prospects, they're equal. But as NBA talent and from an NBA GM perspective, if I already had a go-to scorer, I would 100% take Acuff over Peterson. I feel like on my team. That's just my opinion on it. If I lacked that go-to 25-point per game scorer, I think I would lean Peterson or Debanza, for example. But if I already had that and I needed pieces to build around that number one option I already had, I think Acuff to me is the better option in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I don't disagree with anything. I do gotta say though, I'm surprised you don't have Cam Boozer as a top 3 prospect. That did come as a bit of a shock to me.
I think he's like, in terms of NBA prospects, I don't think he's better than Peterson, Debanza, Caleb Wilson. I think is a better prospect than Cam Boozer. Just in terms of NBA ready. Not saying he's a better player, but Caleb Wilson is lengthy. He's athletic. And I really think that he's a top 3 prospect in this draft.
Well, hold on a second. Cam Boozer is one of the most NBA ready prospects we have ever seen. I mean, that is why he's being drafted so high. Cam Boozer doesn't have a high ceiling, right? It's like the Con Knipple scenario. You have a guy with a really high floor who's going to come in and impact winning immediately, but we don't know if he necessarily has that superstar MVP level ceiling that Debanza, that Peterson, that even arguably Caleb Wilson and maybe Acuff have, right? You could argue those 4 players have all that higher ceilings, maybe a few others, but Cam Boozer's floor is so high. Like, if I had to bank on one of these players, who's going to make the All-Star game first out of this draft class, I would put money on Cam Boozer. That's because he is that developed well for an 18-year-old. He just doesn't have the athleticism I think needed to become a star at his position, a true star at a position at the next level. But Boozer's going to walk in the league and be a 2010 double-double. He's that skilled at it and that gifted as a 19-year-old. His technique, I mean, he's won at every level he has, right? He's the winningest high school player of all time. He has, arguably the greatest high school resume of all time. And then he goes to Duke for 1 year, and he wins the Wooden Award and takes them to the Elite Eight and was the #1 overall seed. He wins awards and his team wins at the highest level at every single level of basketball he's played at. And I don't expect that to change very much in the NBA. He'll win. I just don't know if he's going to be the MVP or the number one option on a championship team that some of these other players have as their ceilings.
Yeah, and that reason you just stated right there is why I don't see him as a top 3 prospect is because of that low ceiling. To me, the best prospects are the ones that can elevate their game to the highest level. And I think Devonta, Peterson, Wilson, Acuff, and I would even maybe throw Wagler in that conversation as they have a higher ceiling than Boozer, in my opinion, in terms of the NBA. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would say he's less of a prospect, not less of a player, less of a prospect for the NBA to grow and mature into a franchise player. That's what I'm trying to say, right? I don't see Cam Boozer as being a number 1 on a championship team, but I could see the other 5 potentially developing into that, if that makes sense. And that's why I don't have him in the top 3 prospect category.
It does make sense, but you look at Colin Knippel, he's a 19-year-old that immediately came in and helped this Hornets team become a playoff team. This young player with insanely high skill and he may not have the athleticism and the potential, but he still has a very high floor, and that can help a lottery team instantly transform into a playoff team. I think that's going to be very valuable to some team rather than waiting, 3, 4, 5 years for these players that may have MVP level ceilings, but if they don't hit them, you would have been better off taking Boozer.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I also would say that Con Knippel was not a top 3 prospect last year. I would say that Flagg, Harper, and Ace Bailey were probably all better prospects than Con Knippel, right? You could even throw VJ Edgecombe in there if you wanted to. So, yes, I'm not saying that Cam Boozer's not going to be a top 3 pick and shouldn't be a top 3 pick because it's all about the teams that's picking. But in terms of NBA prospects, yeah, I don't think Boozer is on the level of those guys because
that makes sense.
I don't think he has the room to improve as much as the other ones. And I don't know if he's going to be a walking 2010 his rookie year. The guys in the NBA are a lot bigger, a lot stronger. And again, it all depends on your role too. So 2010, there's not a lot of guys that average 20 and 10. That's like Karl Anthony Towns numbers. And I don't know if Cam Boozer is going to be like Karl Anthony Towns his rookie year.
Maybe not his rookie year, but that's a great player comp now that I'm thinking about it. Karl Anthony Towns. If Cam Boozer can become Karl Anthony Towns in the NBA, that I think would be a great career for him. He'd been doing something right. But let's get on to our all-tournament teams. Just your standout 10 players who led their teams to deep runs, whether it was Elite 8, Final Four, or to the Natty. Which 10 players stood out the most to you throughout this tournament?
Yeah, so I think the first team, I don't want to say is pretty easy, but it was much easier than the second team, and I have some honorable mentions that didn't make either team as well. But I just took into effect kind of milestones, how far their team went, and how good individually they were in the tournament. So first team all-tourney, I had Cam Boozer, Yaxel Lendeborg, Terrace Reed, Keaton Wagler, and Elliot Cadeau. That was my all-tournament first team. I was considering putting Braden Burries over Elliot Cadeau, but because Elliot Cadeau won Most Outstanding of the Final Four, I feel like I had to throw him in there. So my first team did not have any Arizona Wildcats, and I'm honestly okay with that because I feel like they didn't really have one guy dominate the tournament. Whereas for Illinois, Keaton Wagler was an absolute baller all tournament long. He was the only reason that Final Four game was close against UConn, in my opinion. And you already mentioned Terrace Reed. He was amazing all tournament long. I'm interested to see if you have Braylon Mullins on here because I actually don't have him on the all tournament teams. And I thought about it because I don't want the one shot to carry his play because I know in that particular game he hadn't hit a 3. He was 0 for 4, 0 for 5 before he hit the buzzer beater. So I'm interested to see if you have a second UConn player on your all-tournament teams.
Couple spoilers before I list my first team. I actually don't have an Arizona Wildcat at all in any of these teams.
Oh, wow.
I think you hit it right on the head. It's because they were such a team. It was carried by a team. There wasn't one individual player that stood out, right? It was Jaden Bradley one night. Then it was Braylon Burries the next. And it was Karchenkov the next. and then it was Mona Universe Kruijvacs the next, right? They didn't have one player who led them through the tournament. It was legitimately such a team effort. I mean, Cole Pete, I forgot to throw his name in there. You had five guys that you could have made an argument for. They were all good. I don't think you can make the argument that any of them were great, or at least not as great as the 10 players I have on this list. It's not a knock on Arizona. Incredible team, just not any individual standout performances, if that makes sense. I do have Braylon Mullins on this list. I know he didn't have the greatest game before that shot. He also didn't have the greatest tournament as a whole. He was awful in the national championship game, and he, especially towards the end of the year, his shooting kind of got cold. He was shooting less than 35% from beyond the arc as teams started to really hone in on him in his shooting. I don't care. That shot was the second greatest shot in the history of March Madness. Put Braden Mullins on the second team. Let him have the legacy that he deserves, because that shot, I will remember where I was for that shot. I will remember jumping out of my bed and screaming in my apartment by myself because that shot had me so excited. Legitimately, just the way it was set up. It was a free-flowing play. There was no stoppage. There wasn't a timeout after UConn stole the ball. It was just continuous. Bang, bang, bang. The sequence that it played out in, I mean, you could not write that better. You could not script it better than it played out. So, Braylon Mullins, he may have not had the greatest tournament, but he had an immortal moment. And because of that, I'm going to immortalize him in this theoretical all-tournament team list as well. I gave him second team. Just to list off my first team, I have Elliot Cadeau, Keaton Wagler, Alex Caravan, Yaxel Lendenborg, Terrace Reed Jr.
So no Cam Boozer in your first team all-tournament.
He's on my second team. He's on my second team.
But he's not on the first team. Okay.
Okay. Concession, I did make this about 10 minutes before we recorded. Max had the great idea of doing all tournament teams. I was like, yeah, I should do that. And then I kind of just last second did this. So don't take it for, you could definitely make a case for Cam Boozer first team. I would hear you out. I just try to stick with Final Four teams for my first team just to make it easier. Cam Boozer had an outstanding tournament, but Duke as a whole underwhelmed. I mean, you expect the number one overall seed to at least win their region to make the Final Four. And this is year after year that they continuously come up short in a very disappointing and heartbreaking fashion. So, I took that into consideration as well. Duke underperformed while everybody in the first team, their teams overperformed, or at least performed to expectation. So, Boozer as a whole, he performed great.
I totally hear you there, and that's why, this team for me, Duke did not lose in the Elite Eight because of Cam Boozer, and I think he was definitely a top 5 player in this tournament. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, Boozer dropped 27 in the Elite Eight. I mean, if they won, it would have been because of him. And in the other 3 games, he had 20-point double-doubles, right? They advanced that far in the first place because of Boozer. They escaped Siena in the first round because of Cam Boozer. I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about this Braylon Mullins shot if Siena did the unthinkable. But Cam Boozer is the reason that they even got that far to begin with. He was incredible against St. John's, too, with that, like you said, electric full-court press defense that forced Kansas into what? 10 inbound turnovers, and yeah. Duke another 5. Cam Boozer was sturdy in that. He was a solidifying force who you could give him the ball and he will make the right decision. Right? And that's almost what I was saying about his floor. Cam Boozer's only 19 years old, but he plays like he's 25. There's such a maturity to his game that is so rare among teenagers, much less college basketball players. So I would definitely hear you out that Cam Boozer was a top 5 player. In fact, I would say he was a top 3 player in this tournament. It's just when your team underwhelms and everybody else has teams that, didn't underwhelm, and I was putting it together last second. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. All right, so I'll move on to my second team. And like I said, this was extremely difficult, and I went with 5 guards. And there's honestly one guard that should be on here that I'm going to leave off, which is probably not going to look good, but that's okay. So, like I said, I was between Burries and Cadeau on the first team. So I'm going to slide Burries to the second team because his team made the Final Four, and I need an Arizona player in there. So I'm going to put Burries in there. I'm then going to go with Braden Smith on the pure fact that he broke the all-time assist record during March Madness.
Okay.
That, to me, deserved a spot on this list, and his team made the Elite Eight. So I'm totally cool with that. This is where it gets tough, right? Because I've got 4 guards for 3 spots, and I don't know who to leave off. So I want to list the four guards, and then I'll tell you who I left off. So I'm between Jacoby Gillespie, Tremont Mark, LeBaron Philon, and Darius Acuff. Those are the four guards I've got on this list, and I think all of them deserve to be on this list for me. And I decided to leave off Darius Acuff. Here's why. One, his team went the least far. I don't even know if I said that right, of the other teams. Because Jacoby Gillespie made the Elite Eight. Tremont Mark made the Sweet 16, but they started in the first four, so he actually played an extra game, including a game-winning shot in the first four. And then LeBaron Philon did play in the Sweet 16. However, he played much better against Michigan than Darius Acuff played against Arizona. And so that was the tiebreaker for me. Darius Acuff's game against High Point was amazing, and I don't want to take that away from him. In terms of individual performances in one game, he would be on there, but that was kind of my reasoning. So my second team is Burries, Gillespie, Mark, Braden Smith, and Philon.
When you said five guards at first, I was kind of surprised, but when you list the names, I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at my front court players, or at least the front court player other than Cam Boozer, and I'm like, yeah, those five guards were all better than him. I mean, if I did mine more by positions. I don't know if the all-tournament teams are officially position or position lists. But for my second team, I had Bennett Sturts, Jacoby Gillespie, Braden Mullins, Cameron Boozer, and Trey Coffin-Renn. If this was position list, I would absolutely take Braden Smith over Coffin-Renn. But Coffin-Renn did hit that buzzer beater to send Purdue to the Elite Eight. And he was a dominant four-year force at Purdue. He was a walking double-double from the moment he stepped on and earned a starting spot at Purdue. And yeah, like you said, Purdue made the Elite Eight, so I'm not mad at this at all. I couldn't think of a front court player that I would rather have than Coffin-Renn. Krivak's got a good look here from Arizona, but I thought Coffin-Renn with the buzzer beater had a much more memorable tournament. That's a play I can remember. I cannot tell you an individual play that Krivak's made.
Yeah, and then just to go over my honorable mentions, I had Acuff, Sturts, I definitely considered, Koa Pete, and Ade Mara I thought had a great tournament. However, it's easy to look past someone like that when you're the only 7'4" guy on the court. So I had him as an honorable mention because I also had two Michigan guys on here. And I wanted to shout out a guy like Tremont Mark who on Texas. That kid dropped 30 on Purdue with a broken foot in the second half. The kid was hobbling out there just hitting fadeaway threes. It was insane. So I definitely wanted to shout out guys like that.
Hitting, like you said, a buzzer beater in the first four. So absolutely a hell of a tournament for Tremont Mark. See, I wish I knew better if these guys were seniors or not, because I don't know if we're going to see Tremont Mark in college basketball next year, but I hope we do. Texas will be a lot better if he is. So
yeah, and Mark also played really good against BYU, really good against Gonzaga, really good against Purdue, including his buzzer beater. He had a really good tournament. He was clutch in all four games. Yeah, he's the real deal. I hope he comes back. I don't even know if he would. He'd probably make the league, right? It's like a 3-and-D wing, maybe.
At the very least, he definitely deserves a spot in the summer league.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen his name come up in the mock draft that I've scrolled through. Not even in the second round throughout the year.
Maybe he's coming back then.
After this
college.
Or a lot of players are going to come back just because of NIL. I mean,
yeah.
A lot of players who are projected late in the first round or an early second round will go back because they can get more lucrative contracts and NIL opportunities next year. I mean, look at Alex Golden from Florida. He was a projected lottery pick last year, and then he decided to come back to Florida because he was getting $5 million+ from the Gators to return. And there's even reports that even though his draft stock slid, and this is also a much better draft than last year, so he's now projected as a late first rounder. There's reports he could return to Florida for a third season. And I think we're just going to see a lot more of that. I don't think that's good or bad for the game. It's just a thing about the game. But I think we're going to start seeing a lot more upperclassmen or these borderline draft picks start returning to college basketball in hopes of
I think it's really good. I think it's really good for college basketball because imagine if guys like Zion Williamson decided to stay another year because of NIL money or something like that, right? Guys now I'm not saying this is like that because some kids want to go to the NBA and do all that, and Darren Peterson is the perfect example of that. There's no way he would come back for an NIL bag, right? But there are going to be guys that help college teams win championships because they decide to come back instead of going to the NBA. And I think that is great for the sport of college basketball. For the NBA, I'm indifferent. I don't know if it's good or bad. With a draft class this good, I don't think it's bad at all. But some years, draft classes could definitely take a hit because, some kids decide to come back. So I think it's exciting for college basketball, though, because it incentivizes kids to stay and maybe get a degree, which is also a good thing. So, yeah.
Absolutely does incentivize kids, college kids to stay. But you're also not going to get the Zion Williamsons of the world to stay for a second year, no matter how much NIL money you throw at them. The AJ DeBonces, the Darren Petersons, the Boozers, the Caleb Wilsons, the genuine top 5 picks, you're not going to see a return for another year. It's the players that are, the 14th or the 15th, the projected top 15, top 30 picks, like Alex Golden, who are going to consider. Like LeVaron Philon last year was a projected top 15 pick, decided to come back to Alabama, and is a projected lottery pick once again. So that's another example. Here is the issue I have with that. To go back to your Zion example, what if Zion had came back but he transferred to another team? How would you feel about that?
I think for college basketball, I still think if he came back, it'd be a win. It'd be a loss for Duke, obviously. But I think for college basketball as a whole, if you were able to retain Zion and get eyes on Zion on the college basketball prospect, I still think it would be just as good if he stayed at Duke or if he transferred. Obviously, it depends where he transferred to, but I would assume a guy of his caliber would have transferred to another Power 4 school with championship aspirations.
Yeah, but I guess that's my issue now with college basketball. The one issue I have is that so much of it used to be about roster building and player development. And it seems like at least if the richer you are, the less you care about those two things because you can just throw money at the best players that these smaller schools develop in hopes that they will come to your school. Like, UNC hired Michael Malone. They didn't hire Michael Malone because Michael Malone's a great recruiter or because Michael Malone's a great player development coach. They hired Michael Malone because he knows his X's and O's of basketball. So now UNC, with their blue blood status and their nearly bottomless NIL budget, is going to throw an infinite bag at all of these, the best mid-major transfers and the best Power 4 transfers, try and build a starting 5 of 22, 23-year-olds and tell Michael Malone, hey, this is what we're going to do every single year. We're going to give you a roster of seniors, go win us championships. And to be fair, Malone's a great coach of doing that. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better X's and O's coach, especially at the college level, than Michael Malone. I just feel like that is throwing out so much else, the player development and the recruiting, that made college sports and college basketball so special.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. And you kind of just described exactly what Michigan did this past year. Dusty May was able to put a bunch of transfers together and go win a championship. And I think a lot of college programs that have that bottomless budget, like that have no end in sight when it comes to spending money, are going to use, honestly, the Michigan model now. I think that's going to be, how do we build a team with 2 to 3 elite front court players, 2 to 3 elite guards, and dudes that can shoot the basketball. That was the Michigan model this year. And I think, like you said, UNC is getting a coach where they believe he can coach any combination of players and any combination of talent. And so with the teams with unlimited money, like a UNC or a Duke or an Arizona or whatnot, I agree. I think that's the new model. And it does suck because college sports 10 years ago looked nothing like what it does now. And it's crazy to see just the transformation of it all because of, money, really.
I mean, look at Michigan. I looked at Michigan's roster before this just because I had this question I wanted to know. Michigan has one total player on their roster that is an upperclassman that they recruited. One total player. Every other upperclassman they have on their roster came via the transfer portal, wasn't originally at Michigan. And that is, I think, is the biggest issue among college sports because any mid-major program, you can't build anything now. Because you recruit a player, you turn him into a star. He's not going to stay with you for 3 years and help you get to March Madness. No, he's going to transfer to a Power 4 school and get an NIL bag. Which, great for that player. That is absolutely what they should do. Get yourself a bigger opportunity. Get yourself more money. I just think it is a flaw in the game when we see college players transfer 4 times in 4 years. That is what truly pisses me off. I don't mind a one-time transfer, right? The guys like Yatso Lendeborg, for example, who transferred from UAB to Michigan to get a higher role, to get more money, to increase his NBA draft stock. I love that. I'm in full support of that. I think that's great for the game as a whole. But to see guys like I'm thinking last year, Zeke Mayo from Kansas. I was his fourth school in 4 years, and he was supposed to be a star at Kansas, and he was terrible. But that was his fourth school in 4 years, and that aggravated me so much. It's like there's no that is completely the antithesis of what the college game has been built on, and it's the antithesis of what has made people fall in love with college basketball. Just frustrating as a whole, and I'm sure it's frustrating for fans of mid-major programs.
Yeah, I mean, a program that comes to my mind is Drake. Think of the fans of Drake that not only lost their star player, but lost their head coach, too, to Iowa. Like, that is the perfect example of what you're talking about, and it's going to continue to happen because that is the business model, and that is what is happening in sports. So I completely agree with you. It's not the same, and I definitely think it's worse than it was.
Yeah, and let's look at Utah State. I think this might be the fourth year in a row that they have had to hire a new head coach, because they hire a great head coach. They do their jobs right? They scout out the coach. They hire a great one that fits their program, that helps their team win. But it doesn't even matter, because a school with more money will just throw it out and steal away from BYU or from Utah State. This might be the fourth year in a row that they've had to hire a new head coach after Cincinnati hired theirs away. And look at Siena, right? You almost upset Duke in the first round. 10 years ago, this would have been a huge building block for your program. You made March Madness and almost beat the number one seed. That is huge. You could build something off that. Well, now Jerry McNamara has left for Syracuse. Gavin Doty, Siena's best player, is following him there. And I'm sure Siena's entire roster that nearly got them to win against Duke is all going to transfer out, and they're going to be starting from square one. It's just impossible for mid-majors to get any sense of consistency at this era, and I really think that is something that needs to be fixed just for the health of the game and the long-term future of it.
And I want to say something right now. I saw on Instagram, Luke Combs, huge App State football guy, big country artist, recently had an idea of creating a playoff for football for only mid-majors. So that way schools can actually, of that caliber, right, with that type of budget and with that level of resources, can compete for a championship, as opposed to going undefeated, winning their conference, and getting slaughtered in the first round of the college football playoff. So I'm interested to see, do you think something similar to that would be able to work in basketball? Or are there just too many teams?
We do have something similar. It's called the NIT, and it's called the CBI, and it's called the CBC,
but
and a number of other end-of-year invitationals.
But think of all the mid-majors that automatically make the NCAA tournament just because they won their conference tournament. What if instead, if you were a mid-major, maybe not the champion, but a mid-major that made the championship game, what if you were inserted into a second tournament or something? I don't know. Again, just a thought to where teams like Siena, I don't know. Again, it's all different.
I don't hate the idea of a second tournament, but that also seems like we're conceding that this team is already going to lose. I mean, we play the games because the unthinkable happened. If we're already scheduling a second tournament before these teams have even lost in their first, what's the point of them even playing in the first to begin with? Just a question for you. Did you watch any NIT games this year?
No, not one.
I think that is why it wouldn't work, right? As shitty as it might be for these mid-major programs to make March Madness and then get blown out by 20 points against a Power 4 team, that brings in exposure. And exposure is what brings in revenue, right? You could win the NIT. Congratulations. But you're not going to get exposure, so you're not going to get TV revenue. You're not going to get fans knowing your name and donating to your NIL budget. And that's why that, as a whole, would not work for the mid-major programs. Yeah, they could have their own tournament and compete against teams with a similar talent level to see who the real national championship is. The question is, who cares? No one. No one is going to care, except fans of their school and mid-major fans. But that's a very, that's a much smaller percentage of college fans.
Yeah.
And
no, that's definitely, I definitely hear you. And I definitely think this idea is better for football because of the smaller pool and the skill gap between an App State and a Georgia. Like, right? Like, the skill
Agreed.
gap there is a lot different, and I think it would be a better idea for football. So, I understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, anything else you want to mention about this March Madness year before we go into our last
Um,
segment?
no, all I want to say is, in terms of my favorite game in the entire tournament, I'm gonna go with Duke UConn. I thought that was my favorite game to watch from start to finish. But there were a number of other ones that were insanely interesting, and I just wanted to hear what would you say was your favorite game to watch throughout the tournament?
Duke UConn is the obvious one, but there were also two games that had me get out of my bed and had me standing up in front of my TV in a defensive stance because I was that turned. Those two games were in the first round. It was Kentucky versus Santa Clara,
Yep.
and it was UNC versus VCU, which you already mentioned.
Yep.
Those two games were electric. That last 15 seconds of Kentucky versus Santa Clara, that is peak basketball. That is what makes people fall in love with the game. It was everything you could ever want as a fan and more. And then that comeback, VCU versus UNC, maybe I was a bit more hyped because I had VCU advancing, but I don't care. Seeing them come back from 19 points down, take the game to overtime and go on to win it, that was an exciting game. That an exciting second half too. So just shout out to those two first round games because we talked a lot about the later teams and later rounds. Just want to give some love to the first round because the first round is truly my favorite part of March Madness.
Yeah.
Oh, and High Point, Wisconsin. Gotta throw that in there because
Yeah.
I call that shit.
There were a lot of games that were really good this tournament. Just so many memorable ones. And it's hard to narrow it down to one for sure.
It was absolutely great tournament. Shout out to 2026 because this March Madness year it lived up to the hype. But let's move on to our last segment. We have the 2026 Michigan Wolverines, who just won the national championship. And Yaxel Lendenborg has said that this team is among the best national championship teams ever. So I'm kind of curious. I have a list of 5 national championship teams. One of them are the Michigan Wolverines, but 6 teams. I have 5 teams other than the Michigan Wolverines. I want to give you these 5 teams, and then I want to see where you rank this year's Michigan Wolverines among those 5 national championship winners.
Okay. I'm in.
You ready to go?
Yeah. How far back does it go?
2015 is the furthest year back.
Okay, so I'm not comparing this Michigan team to like the Fab Five, for example.
Fab 5, yeah.
Okay, all right.
The Fab 5 did they even win it all? I thought they lost because Chris Webber called timeout.
Maybe they were still one of the best teams. I do think they won a national championship. I think because again, back then, one and dones, was that even a thing back then? Like, I don't
No, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah, so I think
if you went to college, you were there for multiple years, or you declared out of high school.
They definitely won a national championship, but I also think they lost one because of that play you're mentioning. That's how good they were. They made multiple, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to the list. We'll start off with 2019 Virginia, avenging the round of 64 loss to UMBC the year prior.
Yeah, so this team...
Where do you rank 2019 Virginia?
This team was really good. I believe they were 1 seed. This team had Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter and Kyle Guy. That was kind of the core. They were really good. I still think there's teams recently that'd be better than them. I honestly think they're a perfect 3 just to start off the rip. Because I do think the UConn teams with Hurley would have beaten them. And I'm trying to think of the other teams. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's hard to win a national championship. This team was good. Maybe I go 2, but I'm going to stay 3. I like 3.
All right, 3 for the Cavaliers. Up next, we go to the greatest shot in college basketball history with 2016 Villanova and Chris Jenkins' shot to win the national championship at the buzzer. Where does that go?
That team was also really good. I mean, all these teams are good, right? I think they would have lost to that 2019 Virginia team, though. I think. That Virginia team was really good, and I feel like they won the national championship in more dominant fashion than Villanova did. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if he misses that game goes to overtime, correct?
Yeah, but the Virginia national championship game did go to overtime.
Okay, but they didn't need a buzzer beater to win.
No, they needed an extra 5 minutes of playing time.
Yeah, so they're kind of in the same boat. If the buzzer beater didn't go in, they would have gone to overtime. One team needed a buzzer beater, one team needed overtime, but if the buzzer beater didn't go in, they go to overtime. So it's basically the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is tough. I can't put Villanova 2 though, because I do think there's two teams in my head that would have beaten them. Yeah, 4. I'm going 4. That feels disrespectful to the shot. But I think there's another Villanova team that would have beaten that version of Villanova as well. So I'm gonna put them at 4.
I think you made the right decision. 2018 Villanova isn't on this list, but that team won every single game of their March Madness run by double-digit points.
They
one of the most dominant runs of all time, one of the best teams of all time. You can make a case for 2018 Villanova at 1. 2016, I think you did right.
Yeah, I think the 2018 version, like you said, would smoke the 2016 version. Okay, I got them at 4.
Next up, we have the first of UConn's back-to-back national championship teams, the 2022 version.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of who was on that roster. I'm really struggling. I don't know who.
Caravan was on
Tristan Newton was definitely on that roster.
Donovan Clingan.
So that is that the team with Castle and Clingan and Cam Spencer?
Bucks legend Andre Jackson Jr. Go.
Why am I blanking on the two rosters? Were they like mostly the same roster? I don't think it matters.
They were very similar. There weren't a lot of differences throughout because Clingan was on both rosters because he came back for another year.
Was
Caravan is still playing for UConn.
Was Castle
Andre
on
Jackson,
that roster?
I think, was on both. No. Castle didn't win a natty. I don't think. No, he did. He was on the second one. Sorry.
Okay.
I was thinking of Liam McNeely. He didn't win a natty.
The team with Castle and Cam Spencer, that team, I want to reserve for 1. However, if there's not a team better than this 2022 team, God, it's tough. And you already just kind of spoiled that Villanova 2018 is not on this list. So who else is going to be on this list higher than this UConn team other than the other UConn team? That's kind of my dilemma here. 2015, I mean, I think that was Kentucky. They were pretty good. 2016 we already did. 2017 was Chapel Hill.
2015 was Duke. Kentucky went undefeated that year and lost to Wisconsin.
2014 was Kentucky. Is that correct?
Yeah. Wait, 2014 was UConn as well. 2014 was Shabazz Napier. 2012 was Kentucky with Anthony Davis.
2012 was Kentucky. Well, I'm way off. Okay, that Duke team in 2015, that was Grayson Allen. There ain't no way that team's going in my top 2. Maybe it is. I'm going UConn 1 because I'm okay with if the other UConn team's at 2.
2022 UConn at number 1.
I'm okay with that.
I don't hate it. Next up, the second to last one. So we have 2025 Florida Gators. Last year's
that's a
champions.
Beautiful. Oh God, that's a beautiful number 2. That's such a sensational number 2. God, Walter Clayton was one of the clutchest players in March Madness history. Jesus, the amount of shots. I have to put him 2. I can't put him 5. And if this UConn 2023 is at 5, I'm gonna puke. But I like Florida at 2. They are a perfect 2 here for this list.
Luckily for you, it is not 2023 UConn as the last one. It is the 2021 Baylor Bears.
Oh my God, yes. Okay. I think that's okay. I honestly think 3 through 5 are kind of interchangeable, but I think I got the top 2 right and in the right order. So I think that's a great list.
Okay, so just to repeat the list, we have 2022 UConn at 1, 2025 Florida at 2, 2019 Virginia at 3, 2016 Villanova at 4, and Baylor at 5. 2021 Baylor.
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty good list. I am higher on Baylor, but this is also a blind ranking, so what more can you do about that?
Yeah,
And
like I
now
said,
the
I think the
final
bottom
question.
three are pretty interchangeable, in my opinion. But
Now the final question. This year's Michigan Wolverines team. Where do you rank them in that top five? Where are you going to slot them in at? Make it a top six essentially.
yeah, so honestly, it's so hard. Part of me thinks that Florida team should be one and that UConn team should be two, which is making me rethink where this Michigan is. Am I putting them based on my list, or am I now allowed to rearrange this to
No,
slide
no,
Michigan in?
you got to go. You got to go on your list. Defend your
Okay,
picks. You just made
okay,
those picks. Defend them
okay,
like your elected picks
okay.
on them.
Then based on these picks, I would put them at one.
Wow, 2026 Michigan, the best national champion out of those five.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
I,
I think they beat.
I mean, I'm trying to make an argument against. I think UConn does have the front court size to match up with them really well. With Klingon and then who else did they have? They had what's his name? Adama Sadogo. I think that's his name.
Yeah, but both of them didn't
those,
play
those
at the
two guys
same
match up really
time,
well.
and we just saw Lendeborg cook Caravan on a bad ankle.
True. Good point.
So, to me, the 2023 UConn team, or 2024, whatever year they won their second championship with Castle and Cam Spencer, I think that team would beat Michigan. I also think Florida, the 2025 team, would be better because you have Thomas Howe, Alex Condon, and Chinyalu. Like, that, to me, all of them at least played at the same time with the shot making of Walter Clayton and Will Richard and Elijah Martin. So you had the guards to score and you had the front court to stop Michigan's front court. But because you said I had to go off my list, I do think Michigan beats the 2022 UConn team. So that's why I have them at one.
Yeah.
It's tough.
You know what? That makes sense to me. It is
tough.
It's all hypothetical, but that's a good argument. It's one that I'll definitely hear you out on.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. That Michigan team, I do think, is going to go down as one of the greatest teams of all time, just in terms of how dominant they were during their individual tournament. I'm trying to think how I would compare them to the 2018 Villanova team. I think they would beat them.
I would take Villanova with that, with Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Omari Spellman. The
Think of the size
friendship.
difference. Think of the size difference, though.
But the power of friendship. The transfer portal doesn't allow for the power of friendship.
Okay. That's not necessarily true, but I think Lendeborg, Johnson, and Mara, that size difference would be too much for Villanova. That would be too much. Lendeborg would be guarding Brunson. Just think about that. That would not be fair.
The entire starting five of Villanova is all NBA players. That team was not losing to anyone. That team won every single one of their games by 10 plus points. There was very few teams that in the history of college basketball.
I know. It's tough. It would not be easy for Michigan, but I think they would win that game. God, it's tough though. It's tough.
Yeah, I agree to disagree there.
Yeah, that's hey, that's okay because all these teams are great and they all had great runs. And shout out to Michigan again for winning March Madness. Like you said, I think one of the more underrated champions heading into a tournament that I can remember, just based on how they were looked at right before the tournament and then how people view them afterwards. I feel like Michigan definitely opened some eyes to people about how good they were all year.
But that'll wrap up our March Madness special. Thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned for more episodes. Like Max said at the very start of the episode, regular season is almost over. Still, we will be back in full force with playoff predictions, award predictions, and as we get later in the playoffs, we might be reacting to some of our preseason takes and seeing how right and how wrong we were there. A lot of exciting episodes coming up. A lot of good content to make. Stay tuned for it all. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace out.
Peace.